Pizza Hut and Marvel Comics present Creator's Choice Volume 1, featuring the X-Men and starring Stan Lee, Bob Harras, Fabian, Nicieza, and Scott Lobdell.
30 years of history. You walk into Martin Goodman's office, you want to come up with the X-Men, you want to publish the book. How'd it come about?
Really very strange. We had been creating comics. There was the Spider-Man, there was the Hulk, a few others. And it's very difficult to figure out how a superhero becomes a superhero. You can't keep having characters bitten by a radioactive spider or hit by a gamma ray or zapped by cosmic rays. Then it occurred to me there are such things as mutants. Well, if you could say, and we have, I think, 3 of them right here. If you could say that somebody is just a mutant, he was just born that way, that's a logical explanation, an easy explanation, and I can forget about radioactivity. So we thought, let's get a group of super characters who had obtained their powers through mutancy. They were born that way. And it just made life so easy, and we were able to get this big team going. Tell you a funny thing about that, though. When I first suggested it, I wanted to call the group the Mutants. And the consensus was that, no, don't do that because nobody knows what a mutant is. And I said, that's crazy. No, kids won't know. So we finally arrived at the name the X-Men. I thought of that because it's Professor Xavier, and they all had an extra power. And I said, all right, let's call them the X-Men. That name was okayed. And then it occurred to me, if they don't know what a mutant is, how is anybody going to know what an X-Man is? But I didn't say anything about it. I was glad we had a title, and the rest is history.
Stan, do you remember how you came up with? You and Jack came up with some of the original powers and you guys were working on this stuff?
Well, the powers are always the toughest things to think about because you always want something different. I remembered we had a character called the Human Torch who was very popular, and he was a guy, I mean, it's an everyday occurrence, he could burst in flame and fly. So it occurred to me, why not do the opposite? So that was Iceman, who turned into ice and he used the power of cold. Then it occurred to me, everybody has always wanted to fly. Well, in comics, superheroes usually, like Superman, he just flies. You don't quite know what propels him.
I never figured that out.
But I thought, wouldn't it be fun to have a reason for it? So then we did the Angel, who is now the Archangel. Right. And he just had, I loved the way his wings wrapped around him, and he would then wear a suit over them, and nobody knew that he was the Angel. But anyway, he was able to fly. Then it occurred to me that somebody using the power of his eyes would be fun. And of course, we try to make all of our super characters vulnerable or a little tragic in some way. So he was really cursed with this because he had to wear these dark glasses. And if ever he didn't wear, I'm sorry.
I'm safe. I've been meaning to do this.
So even though it was a blessing, it was a curse. And who were the others? Marvel Girl, that was pretty obvious. She'd use mental powers.
And Beast.
And the Beast I loved very much because I wanted to go against type with him. He looked like a real bestial guy. So I tried to make him the most articulate and the most erudite of all of them, you know. And I think one thing we've always tried to do at Marvel is go a little bit against type.
Having a woman on the team to begin with
was different.
A radical change.
But now the X-Men can have, entire groups of women, and there's hardly a man to be seen for an issue or two, and people like it because they like the characters.
Like
That's
the diversity of the
right.
The thing that I found fascinating watching the pilot the very first time at home on a Saturday was there was a scene where they had like 4 of the X-women and 2 X-Men characters, and I was thinking, I think it's very fascinating that kids all over America are watching a show that comes out so strongly on the strengths of women as superheroes and stuff. You know, people are willing to accept really strong women characters.
Well, the popularity of the female characters. Rogue and
too.
Storm and Jean Grey are 3 of the most popular characters on the team.
The X-Men are still one of the only groups that have youngsters, oldsters, girls, boys, men, women, of all colors, all age, sexes, and I think it just works. It wasn't planned that carefully at the beginning, but mainly thanks to guys like you who took it up later on and have made it so much better than it was when it began. And I want to take this opportunity publicly to thank you, and I'll never say it again, so keep this
But keep the
forever.
tape.
Well, I'll make your kids at home listen to this. He's thanking us.
Right.
Hey, I have a feeling this is about the X-Men.
You think so?
I'm very good at deducing.
Pizza Hut and Marvel Comics present Creator's Choice Volume 2, featuring the X-Men and starring Stan Lee, Bob Harras, Fabian Nicieza, and Scott Lobdell.
The thing that I really like most about the relationship between Magneto and Professor Xavier is we've always tried to have villains, or at least very often, who weren't totally bad. Now, to me, Magneto really thought he was a good guy. He felt he's a member of a group that are meant to rule the world, Homo superior, as opposed to Homo sapiens. And he felt we're persecuted, we're hounded and hunted. Why shouldn't we strike back? We're superior to the human race. And from his point of view, maybe he was right. And Professor Xavier could always understand that. And he was always trying to reason with him and make him realize it. Right. Now, as far as you guys are concerned...
Well, we've changed all that. Now
it's not like that. That's what I was about to say. Now, but you've changed it so much. For example...
One of the problems we came up with is that Magneto was becoming too popular or too recognized as a good guy.
Yeah.
So we had to find a way to bring the tension back between them because they were both starting to go too closely together in their own, the same philosophical road.
I guess it's like that old saying about, like, you know, a hero is only as interesting as the villain, and I think like Magneto was very interesting in the beginning, but if he got too good, then it made Xavier not, and they didn't have anything to react against.
Well, it's tough when a villain's picking up laundry around the house.
Right.
So you got to get it back to the villain.
Magneto
destroy cities.
And I think makes Magneto interesting. As Stan said, he's not evil. He has a different point of view. He's not evil per se. So it's tough for the X-Men to fight him all the time because they're not sure if they're doing the right thing or he's doing the right thing. But he's the most popular villain because he is so fascinating. He is a guy who doesn't believe he's evil.
Well, and then there's the whole like Martin Luther King as Professor X. You know, he has a dream of something better, whereas, you know, Magneto playing the role of, you know, put in the role of like the Malcolm X.
You know, I remember with Professor X, when I first proposed doing him, our publisher said, you can't have the hero, the leader of the group, a guy in a wheelchair, but we did it and it really worked. The readers seemed to love him, and I think he's one of the most unique leaders of any group in comics.
You think at that point the publisher would have been smart enough to say, Stan, anything you want to do is okay by me.
I think the world should be smart enough to say that, but somehow they haven't reached that. Well, don't forget, it also hinges on a lot that's happening in society today. There are so many groups and people that hate other groups and other people, and there's so much really, seriously, there's so much relevancy in the X-Men because of that. And I imagine there could be a character who figures, well, maybe Magneto is right. Maybe we've got to strike back, or we've got to do something to defend ourselves.
Right. So, I mean, there's lots of different characters who are trying to go in the same direction, but they're taking different roads to get there.
Right. That's right.
Professor X, Magneto, even Mr. Sinister, Apocalypse, and
Cable.
Cable, of course, is another one who takes it to a different extreme. The team has been one of the most ethnically diverse teams of superhero characters in comics.
But you know, Marvel has always had that attitude. We used to run editorials about bigotry. And I remember things that were written like, it's okay to dislike anybody. You can dislike anybody you want. But you do it because of something about the individual, not because he belongs to a group. You can't dislike a whole group. And we've always been about that, and the X-Men gave us a chance to really do it in concrete form. And it is one of the best-selling, if not the best-selling group of comic books in the world. And I think that has to say something about the fact that people are basically good, and they basically agree that prejudice is bad, and they enjoy what it is we're saying. Of course, we're saying it in a very exciting way, but the message is there, and people are getting it, and they're accepting it, and I think that's great.
Oh, it freaks the suits and ties out because we're sending out that subversive message, stop the hate. We're sending that out all the time.
But even there, almost all of our characters are from different parts of the country, different parts of the world, and that's great too. And that also, I think, in a subtle way, gives the idea that we're all one people, and we can all work together and live together if we just work at it a little bit.
To have a TV right now.
Hey, I love that title.
It's a good